Hi, good morning. Ashley with Evergreen Property Management Solutions. Today we're going to be going over the July 2023 Rental Housing Code updates, all right? So this past July 11th of 2023 this year, it became effective as of July 24th. So as of now, you should be following all these rules, right? So any renewals that are coming up for any of your leases, you need to make sure that you're implementing these changes, all right? So here's a quick overview, all right? So this is going to apply to the city of Tacoma rental properties within the city limits, okay? So you should know if your property is in the city limits. If you don't know, head online. They've got a little address thing you can put it in, and it'll tell you if you need to have a city business license for this or not. All right, let's see here. So big change number one, this one's going to affect probably the most people. You need to provide a 120-day notice for any rent increases. This is going up from 60, okay? So number two big thing, new standards that apply to shared housing arrangements. All right, there's three main things. Now, everybody needs everybody's contact info. So that means the landlord needs to have the master tenant's info. The master tenant needs to provide the subleasing tenants to the landlord, and the landlord needs to provide his information or her to all the subleasing tenants. So all the people in a shared housing situation need to have everybody's contact information. Now, if there's 4 or more tenants in that rental agreement, there needs to be a new rental agreement for all of the habitable spaces, okay? So kitchens, living rooms, bathrooms, all that needs to be all handled in a rental agreement for 4 or more tenants in a shared housing situation. Finally, notices relevant to eviction. So from now on, the landlord has to provide the master leaseholder with enough copies to provide for any notices that may be relevant to eviction to all of the subleasing tenants, okay? So as the landlord, if there's 4 people in that unit and one of them's the master leaseholder, you need to provide 4 copies of that notice to the master leaseholder. If for some reason that master leaseholder does not provide those copies to the subleasing tenants, in the event that eviction is ordered, those subleasing tenants are going to have an extra 30 days notice, okay? So remember that. Remember that first item that said that everybody needs to have everybody's contact info from now on? Maybe it's not a bad idea, if you can, to serve those notices directly to the subleasing tenant, all right? Next bigger area, standardization of tenant screening criteria. This is going to have 3 changes, okay? First, no blanket bans on felonies, drug convictions, or arrest records. You have to do it on a case-by-case basis. You can't put in your application or your listing anymore that if you have a felony or a conviction, that it's going to be a rejection. You have to actually accept those, process them, and then do case by case, okay? Number 2, you cannot exceed the max income to rent ratio in the city of Tacoma. That's 2.5%, and it's going to be based on the fair market rent values of the area, okay? Now, number 3, when you're running a tenant screening, you have to offer an alternative to a social security number. You cannot only accept a social security number in order to run a tenant screening, okay? So you have to offer some alternatives, IDs, things like that, okay? Next big area, there's going to be limitations on late fees that are being imposed, okay? So first bigger thing, you cannot withhold late fees from security deposits or even report late payments to prospective new landlords of those tenants if they weren't addressed during the tenancy, okay? So if you didn't directly communicate with that tenant about those late fees and they move out and they're applying for a new property and the new landlord calls you, if you didn't go over those things with the tenant directly, then you are not allowed to report those late fees or penalties to that landlord that's calling you for verification, okay? Next one, no late fees on non-rent items. This is parking, this is installment plans, any items that are not rent, you cannot impose a late fee on, period, okay? And this is going to become relevant, right, a little bit later when we talk about the installment plans. Next, you cannot require a pet deposit more than 25% of 1 month's rent. That's going to be the new maximum, okay? All right, and let's see. Along with that, the new rental cap for late fees is 1.5% of the monthly rent or $75 max. So rental fees in the city of Tacoma from now on, if it's a late payment, it cannot be more than $75 or 1.5%, period. Next, if you don't use the pet deposit, then you cannot keep the full pet deposit, all right? So a lot of people will charge like a $300 pet deposit. If none of that is used during the tenancy, right, like you don't actually cash in on that pet deposit to fix something, you can't just keep it at the end, all right? Next, bigger one here. This is really big if you're a small landlord that's maybe not working with like a property management company, and perhaps you've had a tenant in there for a number of years. If you don't have a City of Tacoma business license, then as of July 24th, you cannot pursue any evictions within the city, and you cannot raise the rent until you get that valid City of Tacoma business license. And you have to keep that business license current, right? So that's kind of probably the biggest thing in here if you're a small landlord at this time, is to make sure that you have a City of Tacoma business license. All right, next one. We're kind of getting through these pretty quick. So new rental agreement regulations. So there are 4 changes to rental agreements that you must be aware of. Number 1, all leases must state the legal occupancy of the unit and the habitable spaces, okay? So legal number of occupants allowed in that space has to be present in the lease. Number 2, the landlord can not only provide an online portal to make payments, you have to provide a name and a physical address that people can make maintenance requests, rent payments, communicate, anything like that. And this is important because if you're not in the state of Washington, right, and you cannot provide a physical address in the state of Washington, then you are required from now on to have an authorized agent within Pierce County that can do that for you, okay? So if you're an out-of-state landlord and you've got a property within the city limits of Tacoma, you need to be finding someone right now to work as that agent for you. All right, next, no penalties or deposit forfeitures for month-to-month tenancies, rental agreements, right? That they terminate before like an agreed upon number of months. So if you have like a month-to-month rental agreement with somebody and you say, hey, like you have to be in the home at least 3 months, and they decide after 2 months that they're not really having, they want to leave, right? And they terminate the agreement. Prior to this, you could have kept the security deposit. From now on, you cannot impose any penalties for that, okay? Next, this is kind of a bigger one. So you can no longer have any breed restrictions on your property unless, right, here's the exception to the rule, the homeowner's insurance policy has a breed restriction. The bigger one in the city of Tacoma and basically across the United States is going to be pit bulls, right? You can no longer have a restricted breed list, including pit bulls, unless the home insurance policy has that list. So if you are a property manager, you need to make sure that you're getting a copy of that insurance policy from the landlord that you're working with to have on file in case this comes up. Now, as always, this does not apply to service animals per HUD, okay? Doesn't matter what kind of dog it is if it's a service animal, okay? So never ever, even if your homeowner's insurance says that it's not allowed, right? If your homeowner's insurance says that you're not allowed to have pit bulls on the property, or else they'll drop you, right? If somebody comes in with a service animal, if it is a pit bull, you have to accept that animal. Now, what does that mean for you? It means if anything comes up, right, you need to go ahead and let your insurance drop you, and then HUD is going to come in and fight that insurance, okay? So you got to make sure that you're doing right by the tenant in this situation, even if that means it's going to cause a few more issues for you in terms of dealing with your insurance. But HUD will deal with it, okay? So last thing, okay? Now, you have to offer month-to-month installment plans for move-in fees. Okay, this is going to be dependent on the number of months that tenant is there for, right? So let's go through it. On month-to-month tenancies, you have to offer at least 2 months for them to pay those move-in costs, okay? So a 2-month installment plan. For 3 to 5 month tenancies, right, you have to offer 3 months for them to pay those move-in fees. The city of Tacoma has a sheet online that you can print out. It's like a form to create an installment plan for. You want to use that sheet, okay? And then finally, this is the vast majority of rental agreements. For any rental agreement that's 6 months or longer, okay, so this is those 1-year terms that are super common, you have to offer 6 months to pay those installments, okay? That's 6 months. And you want to do it on the city of Tacoma sheet, so that way you have it all squared away. So those are kind of the big things. Remember, these are all effective as of July 24th, 2023. I do want to advise that Housing Ordinance 1 does look like it's going to pass. From the last I checked, it was a 50 to 49% vote, right? It was like a little over 50%, a little over 40%, 49% or so. So it looks like that's going to go through. That Housing Ordinance 1 is going to override a few of these things, right? It's going to increase the notice for rent, but we do not have an effective date yet for that, okay? So in the meantime, you're going to want to go by these rule changes for the Housing Rental Code of Tacoma. July 11th is when it passed again. If you need to recap these rules, right, you can go to their website. I'll put a link below for that, okay? All right, awesome. Remember, if you have any issues, if you have any questions, concerns, you can call us at any time at Evergreen Property Management Solutions, right? We're always available. You can text us. Our phone number is going to be 253-256-3309, or you can visit us at our website at www.rentinwa.com. All right, have a great day.